Hello, welcome to the podcast AnonX. Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to take sometimes really complex topics and distill them into something fascinating and hopefully digestible for you. Today we are plunging into, well, it's one of the wildest and honestly most pervasive conspiracy theories out there, the reptilian humanoid theory. So our mission for this deep dive is basically to trace the whole story of this belief. Where did it start? How did it get so big? We'll explore the main claims. Who are these reptilian elites supposed to be? What do they want? And we'll look at the so-called evidence believers point to. And maybe most importantly, we'll try to understand why. Why do millions of people actually find this theory compelling, even when there's, well, a serious lack of conventional proof? Did you know, and this is pretty staggering, that recent polls suggest something like 12 million Americans believe their country is secretly run by shape-shifting reptilians? I mean, that's huge. It's like the entire population of Belgium or Greece believing this. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Is it mass delusion, or is there something, deeper going on in how we process the world? Let's try and unravel it.
It's fascinating just to start with how the theory defines them. These reptilian humanoids, they get called reptoids, archons, lizard people, lots of names. They're usually described as having, well, human-like bodies, but with these very distinctly reptilian heads, often taller than average humans too. And they supposedly possess some pretty terrifying powers. We're talking perfect shape-shifting, so they can look like anyone, apparently, plus potent mind control, often described as psychic abilities.
Okay, so shape-shifting and mind control, that's quite the combination. Where are they supposed to come from?
That's where it gets a bit varied. Some believers think they're actually native to Earth, like an ancient race that was here before us. Others argue they're extraterrestrial, specifically pointing to places like the Draco or Orion constellations. And then there's the more esoteric idea that they're interdimensional beings sort of slipping into our reality from somewhere else entirely.
Wow, okay, so multiple potential origins.
Exactly. But the common thread, pretty much always, is that they see humanity as, well, subordinate, like we're maybe genetic experiments or hybrids they created. And it's all supposedly part of this grand plan for, total global domination. They're almost always painted as inherently evil, always chaotic evil, as some might put it.
And what about their actual presence? If they're controlling things, where are they based? Are they walking among us?
Well, according to the theory, yes and no. Proponents suggest they mostly live deep beneath the Earth's surface in these huge, secret, subterranean cities, only coming up to infiltrate human society, usually at the very top levels.
Right, so hidden away. And what are they supposed to be like, personality-wise?
Well, the descriptions often include a lack of empathy, finding it really hard to express love, that sort of thing. But on the flip side, incredibly high intelligence and a real strong affinity for space and science, interestingly. And then there are the more grotesque claims. One that comes up a lot is the supposed preference for consuming blood, even human brains, with a really chilling focus on children who are seen as less poisoned or contaminated than adults in the theory.
That's incredibly dark. Really highlights the sinister nature they're given. So, okay, if we sort of accept these extraordinary claims for a moment, the big question is, where did this specific idea come from? It seems so out there.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting, because the modern theory has surprisingly specific roots, and not that long ago, actually. We're talking 1929. A pulp fiction writer named Robert E. Howard, most people know him as the creator of Conan the Barbarian. He published a story called The Shadow Kingdom, and in that story, he introduced the Serpent Men. They were described exactly like you'd imagine. Ancient, snake-like beings, humanoid bodies, snake heads, from lost continents like Lemuria. And crucially, they had shape-shifting and mind control abilities. Now, it's vital to remember this was pure fantasy, pulp fiction, yet somehow, that story planted a seed that decades later really grew into something else entirely for some people.
Right, but why did that particular fictional seed take root so strongly? It wasn't the only fantasy story out there. Part of it, I think, connects to much older stuff. If you look at ancient cultures, Mesopotamia, South and Central America, even Japan, you find powerful gods and figures depicted with reptilian features.
Like Quetzalcoatl, maybe?
Exactly, figures like that. And the ancient Greeks and Romans had serpent-like beings in their myths, too. So believers often look at this widespread imagery and say, see, it's not just symbolism, it could be a real historical connection, maybe even literal.
Interesting connection to ancient myths. Is there anything else they point to as older evidence?
Yes, another source often brought up is this really mysterious text called the Emerald Tablets. It's supposedly written by Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom, who the Greeks called Hermes, or maybe some high priest from Atlantis. Some theorists see this as ancient proof of these reptilian entities.
The Emerald Tablets, I've heard of those, but aren't they kind of controversial in terms of origin?
Extremely. The actual origins are very murky. The oldest mentions we know of are only from the early Middle Ages, not ancient Egypt or Atlantis. And over the centuries, there have been countless translations, interpretations. It raises huge questions about whether any original text, if one ever existed, is truly preserved. It's very speculative ground.
Okay, so we have pulp fiction roots, connections to ancient myths, and these contested Emerald Tablets. But who really brought it all together into the theory we hear about today? Right, now we get to the key figure. The person really responsible for taking these threads and weaving them into the modern reptilian conspiracy narrative. David Icke. He's definitely one of the most well-known and frankly most controversial conspiracy theorists active today.
His background is quite something, isn't it?
It really is. He started as a professional soccer player, then a sports reporter for the BBC. Had to retire young because of arthritis around 21. He got into politics for a bit with the Green Party, but the major turning point was when he, quite famously and controversially, went on TV and claimed to be the son of the Godhead.
That was a huge moment.
Huge. And it's important to note, his theories, especially linking certain powerful groups, often implicitly or explicitly Jewish groups, to these reptilians, have led to widespread criticism and accusations of anti-Semitism. He claims he's criticizing lizard people posing as Jews, not actual Jewish people, but many find that distinction dubious at best. He's also faced accusations of Holocaust denial.
So he wasn't just repeating old ideas, he actively built this complex narrative, right? Pulling from different places.
Absolutely. He meticulously constructed his theory, drawing on things like those Emerald Tablets we mentioned, but also heavily on testimonies from people claiming they were abducted by aliens, specifically reptile-like beings. His big books on this were The Biggest Secret in 1998 and Children of the Matrix in 2001. That's where he really laid out the whole shape-shifting reptilian overlord idea in detail.
And I heard he's taken it even further recently, connecting it to things way out in space, like Saturn.
Oh, yes. He's definitely pushed the boundaries into, well, truly cosmic territory. One of his more recent and pretty startling claims is that Saturn's rings aren't natural. Not natural? What are they then?
He posits they're artificial structures, and that Saturn itself isn't just a planet, but a massive alien transmitter. This transmitter supposedly beams signals to our moon, which he says acts like an amplifier, relaying those signals down to Earth.
And the purpose of these signals?
According to Icke, they create the Matrix, a sort of fake reality that keeps humanity docile, suppresses our consciousness, and hides the truth about the reptilian control. It connects everything from ancient myths to, well, planetary signal broadcasting.
Wow. That's quite a leap. Does he offer any kind of, pseudoscientific explanation for how that would work? Or is it more of a, this is the hidden truth kind of claim?
It's much more presented as a revealed truth, yeah. Heart of the hidden reality he says he's uncovering. The focus isn't really on the how in terms of physics we understand, but on the what its function in maintaining this supposed matrix of control. You sort of have to accept the premise first.
I see. So, okay, if we follow this narrative, these reptilians have been ruling secretly for ages, passing power down through bloodlines. And they've basically created a global prison by drawing borders and causing conflicts.
That's the core idea, that things like nationalism, wars, divisions, they're all deliberately engineered by these beings to keep humanity weak, fighting amongst ourselves, and easier to control.
And this isn't just a general theory for Icke, right? He names names.
Oh, absolutely.
This is where it gets really specific and quite accusatory. According to Icke and his followers, numerous world leaders, past and present, are either reptilians in disguise or directly possessed by them. The list is, well, extensive. You've got the British royal family, George W. Bush, Henry Kissinger, Bill and Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama. Even someone like Bob Hope was mentioned at one point.
Really? Bob Hope?
Apparently so. And major families like the Rothschilds and Rockefellers are almost always included. Some claims even go so far as to say all 43 U.S. presidents up to the point he made the claim were reptilians, right back to ancient Sumerian rulers and Egyptian pharaohs.
That's an incredible scope. So what do believers actually point to as proof for these kinds of specific accusations against, say, President Obama or the Queen? Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. What's the evidence? Often it boils down to interpretations of things seen in videos or photos or analyzing behavior. A classic example, one that went viral, was that 2012 video clip during an Obama speech. There was a Secret Service agent nearby, and from different camera angles, his ears, eyes, jawline seemed to look odd, distorted.
Right, I think I remember seeing something about that.
For believers, that was it. Slam dunk. Proof of a reptilian caught shapeshifting, a glitch in the disguise.
So it really hinges on interpreting these ambiguous visual cues rather than something concrete.
Pretty much. It often seems to tap into what psychologists call apophenia, that human tendency to see patterns or connections in random or ambiguous information, especially if you're already looking for something specific.
Makes sense. Are there other things they look for?
Yes, believers also suggest looking for certain physical traits. Things like really piercing eyes, green, hazel, sometimes blue that seem to change color. Also, unusually low blood pressure or unexplained scars on the body. Behaviorally, they look for that supposed lack of empathy, difficulty with love, but combined with high intelligence and that affinity for space and science we mentioned.
Okay.
Some even claim you can spot them if you watch TV footage in slow motion. They say you'll see distortions, glimpses of scales, green skin, weird teeth, vertical pupils like a reptile.
So low notion TV analysis.
Wow. And the bloodline thing is huge, too. There's this idea that people with Rh-negative blood type, historically linked to the term blue blood, are more likely to have reptilian ancestry.
Rh-negative blood. Okay. So beyond controlling politics, the theory seems to branch out quite a bit into ancient history, aliens, even the moon. Oh, definitely. It's not just about presidents and queens. This deep dive shows it really stretches to encompass these vast, ancient cosmic connections. It weaves together aliens, mysterious artifacts, and yes, even the moon's role in Icke's Saturn transmitter idea.
And the underground world idea persists.
Absolutely. These reptilians are often described as living down there in secret cities, maybe with super advanced technology. The story goes they retreated from the surface after some big event, sometimes called the schism.
The schism?
Yeah, and some people actually interpret that as being connected to the biblical story of Adam and Eve's fall from grace, a sort of ancient separation.
I see. And their ultimate goal is just total control.
That's the usual portrayal, not just power for power's sake, but complete global domination. Manipulating everything, causing chaos, creating fear and hatred.
Why fear and hatred?
Because, according to the theory, those negative emotions actually feed them somehow, give them energy or strength. It adds another layer of sinister motivation.
It's quite a narrative. Blends ancient myths, modern anxieties, sci-fi tropes.
It really does. And it's been so compelling that it's absolutely saturated pop culture, hasn't it?
Oh, completely.
This idea of reptilian humanoids has been bouncing back and forth between fiction and conspiracy for, almost a century now. You start with Robert E. Howard's stories, and then you see echoes and direct uses of it everywhere. Films like the original V series, or even Godzilla vs. Kong.
Right, V was a classic example.
Definitely. Then you've got literature. TV shows like Doctor Who use reptilian races. Ancient Aliens certainly touches on related ideas. Even music. Artists like B.O.B. have referenced it, and Weird Al Yankovic did a parody song. And games, too. Dungeons & Dragons has reptilian races. There's even a board game called Secret Hitler, where players might be secret fascists or secret lizards.
Secret lizards.
It just shows how powerful this archetype is, Whether you believe it's real or just a story, it clearly resonates.
So moving away from the cultural impact, what do actual scientists and psychologists make of all this?
Yeah, that's the crucial counterpoint. From a purely scientific perspective, the evidence presented is, incredibly thin. Almost non-existent by scientific standards. You've got the clear fictional origins in that 1929 story. You have blurry videos, photos easily explained by camera angles or digital artifacts. These just don't count as verifiable proof.
And the more extreme claims, like Saturn's rings being artificial.
Those lack any supporting scientific evidence whatsoever. They really cross the line from critical thinking or even fringe theory into what most scientists would simply call fantasy.
What about the references to religious texts like the Bible? Believers sometimes point to serpents and dragons there.
They do, but biblical scholars and detailed textual analysis consistently interpret that imagery, serpents, dragons, as symbolic. They represent things like cunning, deception, temptation, evil, often Satan himself. There's no credible interpretation within mainstream theology or biblical scholarship that suggests these are literal shape-shifting reptile people. In archaeology, any signs of ancient reptilian rulers?
Nope. Extensive archaeological research across the globe has found zero evidence to corroborate any kind of ancient reptilian species ruling over humanity or coexisting in the way the theory proposes.
So scientifically, it doesn't hold water.
Yeah.
But the psychological angle you mentioned earlier is fascinating. Why does it resonate?
Right, and this is where it gets really interesting from a behavioral science perspective. Conspiracy theories like this often appeal because they seem to offer hidden knowledge. They provide a simple, maybe even comforting explanation for very complex, messy, and often disturbing social or political events when things feel chaotic and out of control.
It's easier to blame a hidden hand.
Exactly. It imposes a kind of order, even if it's a malevolent one. It's a pattern we've seen throughout history blaming unseen entities, like medieval people blaming dragons or demons for plagues or misfortunes.
And you mentioned something about our brains and snakes.
Yeah, there's some intriguing neuroscience. Researchers have found specific neurons in primate brains, including ours, that seem specialized to quickly detect snakes. It suggests a possible biological predisposition, an evolutionary leftover to be particularly wary of reptiles, and that deep-seated wariness could make some people more susceptible to paranoia about, well, lizard people. Our brains might be primed for that kind of fear.
That's a really interesting potential link. So, putting it all together, what's the real-world impact? Is it just harmless internet chatter, or does it actually affect society?
Well, that's the thing. While it's easy to dismiss it as just, bonkers fantasy, it can have very real and sometimes quite serious impacts. It can definitely foster paranoia, deepen divisions in society, and fuel anti-government sentiment, sometimes in very unproductive ways. As some commentators have put it, it might be bonkers, but it's definitely not harmless.
And there have been extreme cases, haven't there? Tragically, yes. And this is where it gets genuinely chilling. There was that horrific case in Seattle back in 2019. A 26-year-old man stabbed his younger brother to death. His stated reason: he claimed he believed his brother was a reptilian and that God told him to do it.
Oh my God.
It's a truly tragic example that underscores how deeply these kinds of beliefs can take root and lead to absolutely devastating consequences. It's similar in a way to the real-world violence linked to the Pizzagate conspiracy theory.
It's terrifying when belief disconnects so drastically from reality. So why? Why do these theories persist so strongly, even when they're debunked over and over? That's the key question, isn't it? Often it's because they offer those simple, seemingly neat answers to huge, complex, global problems, or maybe even confusing personal experiences. For you, the listener, it's really vital to make that distinction. It's healthy to think critically about power structures, about hidden influences. Even Icke touches on legitimate questions about power sometimes.
Right, questioning power isn't the issue itself.
Exactly. But it's crucial to distinguish that critical inquiry from accepting these really bold, dramatic, and often quite outlandish claims without any verifiable evidence. It makes you think of that old saying, tell a big lie, repeat it often enough, and it becomes the truth.
Always ask for the proof.
Always. It's healthy to question, to watch what powerful people do, but we have to ground our understanding in facts, in scientific consensus as much as possible. We need to reserve that kind of creative narrative explanation for areas where it doesn't risk causing real harm to others or ourselves.
Yeah.
Ultimately, figuring out what you choose to believe and why is a really significant personal responsibility.
And that, I think, wraps up our deep dive into the reptilian humanoid conspiracy theory for today. It's been, a genuinely fascinating journey, looking at how bits of fiction, ancient beliefs, our own psychology, and deep-seated anxieties can all sort of merge together, how they can create this narrative that, against the odds perhaps, captures the imagination and even the firm belief of millions of people around the globe.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. From those surprising pulp fiction origins with Robert E. Howard through David Icke's absolutely central role in popularizing it, we looked at the incredible accusations leveled against world leaders, the kind of evidence people point to, and importantly, the scientific and psychological perspectives that offer counter-explanations.
It really is a powerful case study in the human drive to find answers, isn't it?
It absolutely is. A reminder of our deep need to understand the world and the sometimes very strange and winding paths that search for understanding can take. So, what really stands out to you after hearing all this? Maybe it's just the sheer scale of belief, that 12 million figure. Or maybe it's tracing that clear line from something written as pure fantasy to a belief that has real, sometimes tragic consequences today. And maybe consider this as we finish. In this age we live in, just drowning in information with so many conflicting narratives swirling around, how do we actually do it? How do we discern what's real from what's illusion? What responsibility do we have as individuals to really evaluate the claims we encounter and to make sure our own search for answers doesn't accidentally lead us down paths that create harm or division? That's definitely a question worth diving into a bit more on your own. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.